After less than half a decade at the helm, Sapporo is selling off Stone Brewing. To understand where the craft brewing industry is headed, we have to recap how this high-flying first-wave juggernaut out of Southern California wound up on its long fall to rock bottom. And Richmond, Virginia, where I live, is a good place to start. In October 2014, Stone concluded its multi-city search for an East Coast location with the announcement that it would be taking its talents to Richmond, Virginia. The city's hope was that Stone's then legion diehard fans would bring cash and, by extension, investments to the area around the firm's East Coast hub. City officials lined up land deals and put its taxpayers on the hook for $31 million in general obligation bonds to lure Stone to town. Tourists, Stone's co-founder Greg Cook told the Washington Post in 2015, would, quote, spend money on hotel stays, local shops, and local restaurants, unquote. Much like they did at the brewery's original World Bistro and Gardens in Escondido, California, which was then doing an estimated 600,000 visitors annually. And the monkey's paw curled. In April 2026, Sapporo announced plans to sell Stone to Devil USA's Firestone Walker for an undisclosed sum. The Japanese brewing giant is itself no stranger to California-based craft brewing blunders, having euthanized San Francisco's Anchor Brewing Company in 2023, shortly after it acquired Stone. All in, Sapporo has spent around $250 million on breweries in the craft beer industry since 2017, and it either doesn't own that brewery anymore in the case of Anchor, or soon won't in the case of Stone. If its strategy wasn't just buy firms named for things that sink and hope for the best, well, that's basically how it worked out. Still, having spent some $40 million to upgrade the brewery here in Richmond that Stone opened in 2016, Sapporo will now dedicate those tanks entirely to brewing its own flagship lager to serve the U.S. markets. It's a happy enough outcome for Sapporo. Less so for Richmond. Stone's hospitality hub here never materialized. Nor did those cash-flashing, arrogant bastards that were supposed to show up and spend money on hotels and attract new investment. Its taproom has never been very popular among Richmond's drinking public. I live less than half a mile away, and I've never seen its sprawling asphalt parking lot even half full. It was built for a future that just never came to pass. In a sense, much of Stone's empire wound up being like that Richmond parking lot, but it wasn't always that way. In 2017, Stone reached number 8 on the Brewers Association's annual chart of the top producing craft breweries by volume. That year, Stone IPA did $28.8 million in chain retail sales. But that would be the brand's high watermark. Dun, dun, dun. With the benefit of hindsight, it's easy to see how Stone's self-inflicted reputational damage and lack of focus did the firm in. But as someone who was working the beat back then, it was also very easy to see at the time. Many of Stone's image problems were directly downstream from Cook's seemingly pathological inability to log off. For a while there, it felt like he was putting out 2,000-word blog posts every other week, taking on enemies real and perceived within the industry and beyond it. At times, this beg for forgiveness, don't ask for permission, impulse for public communication appeared to seep into the walls of the place. But while Stone was capable of walking back bad jokes under public pressure, it proved remarkably incapable of ignoring perceived instances of intellectual property theft. Coupled with Cook's always be posting mindset, that caused problems of its own. Whatever merit that litigation has, it was a public relations disaster. It fueled a growing narrative that Stone had sold out the movement and that Beer Jesus had lost the mandate of heaven. Stone's business was inflected with a similar, arrogance. In conjunction with the distractions, increased competition, and macroeconomic shifts, it cost the firm dearly. In 2016, Stone announced a $100 million investment fund called True Craft, and a few months later, a $90 million private equity investment in the brewery itself. The former never amounted to much, despite Cook's lofty promises that it would help other craft brewers obtain, quote, the financing and flexibility that they need to flourish while keeping their soul in control, close quote. The latter contributed to some $464 million in debts hanging over Stone's head as it emerged victorious from 5 years of trademark infringement litigation with Molson Coors, a factor that ultimately helped to force it into Sapporo's arms in 2022. Stone's international expansion to Berlin was ultimately a disaster. It opened in 2016 and sold in 2019 to, wait for it, Brewdog, having wasted well in excess of $29 million that the project was initially supposed to cost. Stone closed its Shanghai outpost in 2020. It closed its Napa location in 2021, and in 2023 lost litigation over back rent at that location. Along the way, hundreds of workers lost their jobs, some in more dismal fashion than others. Sapporo ownership made few amends on this front. As I reported for VinePair, it spent over $100,000 busting a Teamsters drive at the Richmond plant in 2024. Stone's portfolio went stale as it struggled to reconcile its dogmatic vision of what craft beer should be with what younger drinkers wanted out of the segment. In many of Cook's posts over the years, he noted that industry onlookers may be experiencing some schadenfreude as he and his company were forced to eat crow and follow demand. And to be fair, there was a lot of that. But much like fellow first-wave West Coast belligerent rogue ales and spirits, the delicious IPA makers' decline was only delicious to industry insiders because of the pride that cameth before the fall. This video is adapted from a recent column that I published at VinePair. Read it in full and find new columns every Friday at vinepair.com/hop-take. And let me know if you like this video essay version in the comments below.